Hello, I'm John Ireland, and I've been a resident of Santa Barbara for a long time now, and I want to let you in on a secret. You have to watch KCTV's Around the Town. It's the show that keeps me informed of what's going on in my community. I tune in. Why don't you? Come on, win one for the Gipper.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Around the Town. I'm Ken Boxer and we have a very exciting show this half hour. In fact, I can't believe the guest that we have during this half hour. White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater, here live in the studio on KCTV's Around the Town. Welcome to Around the Town, Marlin.
Thank you, Ken. Nice to be here.
Thank you so very much for coming. Your job responsibility as the spokesman for the White House has to be enormous. The responsibilities that you have day in and day out. How do you get through a day?
Well, it's really not as bad as it seems. The key is being prepared, knowing what's going on in the world, and having a good staff around you that make sure that you know what's happening. But it is a long day at the White House, and the press corps is big and vociferous and interested and demanding. But it's also a very exciting kind of day.
What is that day like? You start in the morning, what happens?
Well, we start early in the morning, first of all, to scan the newspapers and find out what the press is interested in that day. Then we take a look at
Wait. Before you get to that part, you wake up, get out of bed. What's the first thought that happens right before you know you're going to head to the White House?
Well, the first thought is one of fear when you know that you're going to pick up the paper on the front door and find out how bad are the things you said yesterday. And so I always live in fear that Fitzwater says something stupid again on the front page of the Washington Post. So that's the first thing.
Okay, so you've looked at the newspapers, then what happens here?
Well, I live in Virginia, so I have about a half-hour commute to the White House. And as I said, we go through the papers, and then I prepare a memorandum for all of the White House staff and for the President that outlines the major news stories of the day and what we will have to respond to. Then we have a senior staff meeting in which all of the President's staff discuss the issues of the day as well as his meetings, what he is going to be saying to various groups, and what kind of press coverage we want. And so the first hour or two of every morning is really planning, getting the President ready for his day, making sure he has the backup papers he needs, and making sure that all of us are focused on the events of that day.
Now, are you calling the President on the telephone when you're at the White House or at home and saying, hey, did you see what was written about us yesterday, or what's it like? What are you doing?
Well, I don't call him too often unless it's something pretty dramatic. That happens occasionally, but for the most part, when he comes into the office, I'll catch him between meetings, or when he first comes in and say, gee, the press says that you had a terrible night. Tell me, was it good or not? And he is very easy to work with. The President's wonderful in terms of telling me what's going on and how he feels about things. And so he makes the job very easy from that standpoint.
So on a day-to-day basis, you're in contact with the President from day to day?
Well, yes, you have to remember that in the White House, the President has a staff of probably 10 or 15 people who are really in charge of his daily schedule and organize events for him and that sort of thing. And so we are all around him during the day. And of course, just as you'll be around the manager of this station, for example, during the day. And so it becomes a very collegial kind of working relationship.
What is that relationship, though, with the President? Is it a cordial one with you? Are you telling jokes? Are you serious all the time? What is that relationship from a day-to-day basis?
Well, the interesting thing about working for a president is that you never forget he's the president, first of all. There is always a slight wall there, a wall that says, this man has the power that rules the country in terms of managing the government. On the other hand, there's also a familiarity, and there is a lot of easygoing jokes before and after meetings. The president's a great storyteller, and often we'll do our business for 20 minutes or half an hour, and the president will end the meeting with the story he's heard. So it's kind of a combination of formality, respect for the office, and at the same time, casual informality.
You are the voice of the president. What's that like?
Well, it's not as hard as it seems in the sense that, for one thing, President Reagan has been in politics for 20 years or more. People know what he believes, what he thinks, and I know what he believes and what he thinks. And a big part of my job is interpreting what the president would say or how he would react to various events simply because he's not available. I mean, the whole purpose of a spokesman really is simply because the president doesn't have time to do it himself. And obviously the press would like it, and I'm sure the president would like it if he had nothing to do all day but talk to reporters. So, so mainly I just have to know what the president is thinking about various issues.
When you inherited the job, it was during a period of time when it was pretty hot in the White House, so to speak, with the Iran-Contra. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people said, oh, poor Marlin, he's, you know, no one would want your job at this point, because when Larry Speakes was leaving, you came in. Uh-huh. What was it like in the White House at that time? Well,
it was a little strange in the sense that I had been a deputy press secretary to Larry Speakes from '83 to '85, and then went with Vice President Bush as his press secretary, then came back then in February of '87. The Iran-Contra story had just really broken and gotten underway, and that did make a big difference. There was a lot of pressure on Ronald Reagan, the chief of staff at that point, to leave, and so that caused a somewhat difficult situation inside the White House. And there was more turmoil than I had remembered, certainly in '83 and '84. On the other hand, it was a great challenge too. In many ways, it was the best way to start a new job, because we didn't quite know what was happening. Investigations were just started. The president had ordered the Tower Board report to look into Iran-Contra. He had ordered full cooperation with all the authorities, and there were just a lot of things happening. And
but for you personally, how were you handling it in terms of when you went home? what were you doing?
I just walked in and said, you know, first of all, don't talk about what I don't know about, and don't answer questions I don't know the answers to. As long as I kept that in mind, I was in pretty good shape. And what I tried to do was to be as honest with the press as I could be, but at the same token, I wanted to make sure that the White House didn't end up in the role of investigating itself. I mean, the president was, I think, very wise when he first discovered this situation with their diversion of funds. He went to the press, he went to the public, and he got outside investigations organized to look into the whole affair. And I thought it was important for me to maintain that posture so that the American people could know that it was a third party that looked into this and not the White House. So while the White House press corps was always after me to try to answer questions about who did what to whom and so forth, for one thing, I really didn't know those answers, mm-hmm. And two, I thought it was important that we not try to answer them, that those be left to the independent parties.
Looking back on it now, do you think you did the right thing in the way you handle it, in terms of your position?
Well, let's just say I don't know how I would do it any different. And I'm pleased with the outcome. I mean, I tried to maintain some civility, but in a situation where there was a lot of tense feelings between the press and the White House. I tried to be as honest and open as I could. And above all, I believed in the president. And I just latched on to him as my rock, so to speak, and said the president did the right thing and knew what he was doing. And beyond that, the rest of this can swirl around us. And on balance, I'm pleased with the way it all worked out.
The relationship you have with the president, does he ever ask you for advice? And when he does, if so, does he accept it and does he ever use it?
Well, he asked about advice on dealing with the press. Things like, for example, who's coming to see me, what do I say on a certain issue, or maybe what have we said